righty.
Okay.
Welcome to. Now this gets confusing because we've had to change the name of our podcast before we've even begun to release our podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm getting it all screwed up in my head. Like, do I call this the first episode under the new name or the third episode of the new podcast, but the first episode under the new name?
I was just gonna say third episode of Canuckle Pucks, and then have them put two and two together.
Okay.
Now you got my brain in a knot, and I don't know if my notes are good enough for today.
Well, welcome to an episode
Yes.
of the Canuckle Pucks. Is that what we're calling? Canuckle Puck, singular.
Yes.
The Canuckle Puck podcast, previously known as, I can't remember what we called it before.
Originally, we called it Canuckle Heads.
Canuckle Heads. And then it turns out there was another podcast under the same name.
And they have not posted since, I think, either January 2023 or May 2023.
What do you think happens? Like, why does that? I mean, I get why that happens. I mean, with Dallas and I on Sticks and Stones, at a certain point it just kind of peters out and but that's a strange time of the year to stop it. Like, I think Dallas and I stopped after, the hockey season ended.
Yeah.
Like,
That would make
January
sense.
was right in the middle of the season. So what was that like? The team sucks and it's too depressing?
Yeah, maybe, because they could have just been like very depressed fans who just didn't want to invest any more time in the team on that podcast. But you know what? Hey, you got the name, whatever. This is a Canuckle Puck podcast where we're going to, this podcast is special, to quote the first episode, because we get to say stuff like shit, bitch, pussy, and fuck.
Yeah.
And speaking of fuck the 5-game suspension on Morgan Reilly.
Yeah.
I thought that was fucking stupid. And you're talking to a Toronto guy here. Look, I'm going to put on my Leafs cap for a second.
Leafs are losing right now, by the way.
No, did they? Are they?
It was 1-0.
It's 1-1 now.
Oh, okay.
So at the time of this recording, it's 1-1 against the Flyers.
Okay,
the rest
stand
of the game.
corrected. Okay.
It's like I was so mad because the first goal from Philly was a shorthanded goal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a shorthanded goal. That's how bad the Leafs are without Morgan Reilly right now.
Flyers are a good team, though, this year. It's
Very
weird.
underrated team.
I don't know why they're so good, but they've beaten the Canucks twice, I think. At least that game. Yeah, because that was the first loss of the year. And then I was at the game over the Christmas break where they kicked our ass. It was embarrassing.
The Flyers are a deep team, but they're a big team. Like Sean Couturier as the first-line center is exactly what Ryan O'Reilly was to the St. Louis Blues when they won the Cup.
And they just named him captain, I believe.
Yep, today is his first game as captain.
It's interesting because, there's a lot of things that are interesting about that. But one of them, of course, is the Carter Hart thing. Because, a year and a half ago, he was kind of considered the franchise goalie. And but even before all the shit hit the fan this year, the other guy, was starting to almost outplay him. You got to wonder now if Carter Hart knew what was coming, if it was weighing on his mind. I mean, can you imagine knowing you're going to be charged criminally and publicly and knowing of the shitstorm that's going to come and have to then keep your focus on keeping a puck out of a net? Holy shit.
Yep. And, just speaking strictly to his gameplay, clearly he did not live up to the hype that the Flyers put him up to be, period. I get it. He was on a World Junior team that did really well. But at the end of the day, when you make it to the big leagues, if your mind isn't in that set as a goalie specifically, this is why people don't F with goalies during warm-ups. Goalies are the most mentally locked-in dudes I have ever watched in anything. Practice, warm-ups, all of it. It is wild. No one talks to them. Every player that talks about a star goalie afterwards, there's always a story of getting a death stare from the goalie if you screen your own goalie and the puck goes in the net off a shot. So as far as the mentality of a goalie is concerned, I completely understand why goalies are either completely unhinged or a little nervous, or just a straight-up stalemate and just locked on, right?
100%. I mean, Carter Hart, when he was good, playing well, was as good as they get. He's a very good goaltender, but, I mean, do any of those guys come back from this? Do any of those guys ever play a game in the NHL again? What if they're acquitted? I mean, it's funny, right? Because remember all that stuff with Gian Gameshi?
No.
The CBC host of Q, and then he was criminally charged with sexual assault, and and he was acquitted, but it was over. I mean, and I remember when Jacob Hogard was on trial, the guy from Headley.
Yeah.
And people were saying, well, gee, I wonder if he gets acquitted or is Headley going to be back? And I'm like, no. Like, because the thing is, and that's why I call it, I said, if he gets acquitted, it'll be like a Gomeshi acquittal. Like, in other words, you get acquitted, but everybody knows what a piece of shit you are.
Yeah.
And it's kind of over no matter what.
Yep.
So when the details start to come out, and I mean, even look at what happened to Jake Virtanen.
I was just gonna say Virtanen.
I mean, he was acquitted.
He was acquitted,
And is he back in Russia? I don't even know.
I don't know if he went back to the K or if he went to the Swiss League. I never kept track of Jake Virtanen after that. Mind you, I was never a big fan of Jake Virtanen. Both, I have some stories about him.
So do I, because I know people who grew up with him.
Yeah, an Abbotsford product.
But then, just flip side of it, I went to a Canuck event where you got to meet players. This had to be, 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And I took my son, Connell, who's a massive fan. He was so nice to him. He was so, so nice. Now, does that mean he's not a rapist? No. But, it's funny. I mean, humans are complicated. And, I mean, it's just interesting that, based on, if that was the only experience I'd ever had with this guy, if I didn't know all the other shit I knew, I would have said he's one of the nicest people I ever met.
Yeah.
Because he gave my son some attention.
Oh, he was always, I remember working those fan events where first season ticket members specifically. He was nice to everybody, specifically
because not
kids.
everybody is at those things.
I will say this is that some NHL guys, or actually every NHL player, I remember when the draft was held in Vancouver a few years ago. I have that lanyard still that says the year. What year was it? 2019.
Yep.
And I think that was the Podkolzin draft.
Right.
And I remember just at the side of the arena by gate 16 was a little white van where players would then meet some of the PR and marketing departments of the league. They take some photos of them outside of the arena after they got drafted and so on and so forth. And I remember specifically running straight into the Oilers pick at that time, Philip Broberg. Broberg was holding this binder at the time, and it was a binder, and it was essentially PR practices for players. This is how you behave in front of the camera, and that's it.
That's interesting.
And that's what was told to me, because I said, "Hey man, huge fan of your game. Congrats on getting drafted. What is that?" And that's what was told.
Well, it's funny because there's an analogy to the music business because the only reason I'm even in the music business is I moved into an apartment in the early '90s, and my neighbors were in a band. And they weren't famous, but they were on a well-known record label, and it was a couple, a man and a woman who were also a couple. And, I started to listen to their music because they were my neighbors. I was curious. And it was great. I mean, they were great. And the guy wrote all the lyrics, at least. And the songs are all about the relationship that he had. And if you just looked at the lyrics, you'd think, wow, this guy's so articulate in how he dissects the relationship and analyzes it. But then, as I got to actually know them, it was the worst relationship ever. And it was an interesting lesson for me to learn, which was okay, just because an artist can, in their art, show a great understanding and depth of knowledge about relationships, that doesn't mean their relationships are healthy or that they're living a healthy life or that in their own life there's anything that kind of insight being sort of applied to how they live their life. And there's no reason to think it's different with hockey players. I mean, I bet a lot of them, just like a general cross-section of humanity, are fucking assholes, but you might never know it because...
it's a difference between display and lifestyle, really. When you're playing hot and you're playing great, no one really wants to know who you are. They just want to make sure that you're winning for the team. And when you're not playing hot, you're not playing great, people want to hate you no matter what you do. Best example is Dion Phaneuf, who was the nicest guy you could ever meet.
I've heard that.
Nicest guy you could ever meet. Loved the fans, but fans at the tail end of that, and I felt bad for Dion because I thought Carlisle coached him wrong in general at the tail end of his career with the Leafs before he got shifted off to the Senators. just an awesome guy all around. But that's the thing about fan perspective and the difference between display and lifestyle, who you are. And, going back to
And he's still a Sean Avery sloppy second all these years later. Aren't they still married, him and the
yeah,
Alicia Cuthbert or whatever
I
her
think
name
that's her name. Yeah.
Remember that?
Yep, and she was there at the Dion Phaneuf inaugural puck drop game, his farewell retirement game. She was there to puck
Sean
drop
Avery.
there. Sean Avery is so wild, dude. I don't know if you've ever seen his Instagram. This guy is a bike lane warrior. I don't know if you.
I did see that, the road rage stuff.
Dude,
I saw it.
All of it, like, he documented like 4 straight days of stories of him just yelling at people blocking the bike lanes in New York. One of them was really funny because the guy had a really bad haircut. Like, imagine a bowl cut at the top, but then your wavelength at the bottom.
And then was Avery saying shit about it?
And Avery was just like, so to quote Avery, based on my recollection, I could be wrong, but I just remember laughing so hard at this one story he had, which was, "Hey, fucker, why are you blocking the lane over here? We're all trying to get through. Do you not see the family trying to pass through your fucking truck on the right here? Also, what's up with your fucking hair?"
Yeah.
And I was just like, yo, Sean Avery.
You know, he's an interesting guy. I mean, I will say I find him entertaining, and he's not an idiot. Like, he can do things that are idiotic,
Yeah.
but he's got some intelligence. Like, that's pretty obvious when you hear him talk. He's articulate. I've always found him just kind of a fascinating guy.
Yeah, he's definitely got the goon personality that you wouldn't expect.
And he's really into fashion.
Yeah.
And he worked like as an intern at Vogue or something. I mean,
He was also in the movie about Maurice Richard, the Rocket.
right.
He was, ironically enough, a ranger in that movie.
By the way, everyone, I'm sorry you're having to hear me eat. I'm eating fruit. I'm trying to be healthy, but that doesn't mean it sounds like nice on the podcast. So I'll do my best not to keep my crunching to a minimum. Although I will say, so I bought these strawberries at Whole Foods, and anybody who shops at Whole Foods knows that it's expensive. And God damn it, like the first strawberry I picked out of there was like rotting, and I just bought it yesterday. And man, like, it's one thing if you go to the corner grocer and buy something and it's not great. You go to Whole Foods, you're paying a premium for that stuff.
Yeah.
God damn it, pisses me off.
You're paying for the premium gas of strawberries here, and it's not fueled up well. That, at least from that first one, and it's not great.
The rest of them have been pretty good. So
All right, there you go.
I'll say that. But boy,
All right.
have we ever gotten off?
Yeah,
topic?
we
were
began
going to
with
talk
the-
about Morgan Reilly.
Yeah.
You're the Leaf guy. Why don't you go first, and then I'll tell you what I think about it.
Look, I'll quote. Part of what John Tortorella said in the Flyers Leafs pregame or morning practice is, these young kids, they're highly talented. This is probably the most skilled and athletic capabilities of an athlete you'll see in the league. However, there's a small part of me where you got to learn the responsibilities of a player and learn the responsibilities of your behavior. And that's a part of the game that is dying down, is what Torts pretty much said. And when I saw that, there's a lot to break down. So number one is you don't take a slap shot into an empty net when you want. I'm sorry. It's a disrespectful statement. That's number one. Number two is, if you look at the cross check, Morgan Reilly, like, I'm not the one that hyper focused on this. This is other outlets like Sportsnet and TSN that are saying, look, Morgan Reilly was going for the numbers, and then the shoulder went up from Greig, and that's how it got to his face. I think what Morgan Reilly did, yes, you can classify it as too much and outrageous, but at the end of the day, that was a state. This is a guy who plays with passion, and this is a guy who plays with heart. And that game, in that instance, was a statement. Who else has heart on that team?
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I loved the slap shot. I'm not going to lie. I loved it. I thought, and not because I'm a Leaf hater. I just thought, that's a ballsy, what a bastard.
For a 21-year-old kid.
Yeah, what a bastard. Like,
I was like,
because, part of the context to all this, of course, is that arena that night looked like it had way more Leafs fans than Ottawa fans, and it probably did.
Usually, because
due to the proximity of the cities. And so, that must have felt goddamn good. Not only did we beat you, we humiliated you.
Yeah, and the Senators.
I also understand why Morgan Reilly did what Morgan Reilly did. Like, I'm okay with both of them, except the concept I'm fine with. The execution was unfortunate. And I agree. Like, it looks like he's trying to hit him in the shoulder or something. And, what's the other dude's name? Greig?
Ridley Greig.
Greig sort of reacts at the last second, puts his arm up. That's a natural thing. And the stick kind of rides up. And that's why I was surprised at the 5 games, because the league does tend to take that into account. Like, they're supposed to, I think, all the circumstances. And, having said that, it's a dangerous thing to do. And I think
George Parros said by that 5-game suspension has set a false precedent. And that's saying to younger players coming up, you want to get cocky? You really want to rub salt in the wound? Go ahead and do it, because if anyone tries to retaliate like that against you, it's a 5-game suspension. Look at the precedent George Parros just set.
Yeah,
he set this precedent.
It's tough.
And this is coming from a guy who made his career as a goon as well.
It's tough because I think part of the problem is the lack of consistency in how they, like, I'm a lawyer, so I'm used to the whole concept of precedent, and, you set a precedent, and I mean, literally our common law legal system is based on that. You find a case that has similar facts, and then you use that to support your case. Your Honor, the facts in this case here are exactly the same as the facts in front of you, and therefore it should be the same result. There has to be some predictability so that players know what to expect. So I can't honestly say 5 games to me felt excessive. It kind of felt right to me. That doesn't mean I like how the league deals with these things. I don't. And it's just really unfortunate because, I mean, Morgan Reilly, say what you will about him. I think he's a great player, but say what you will about him. He's not a dirty player. And
no.
He might have been up for the Lady Byng until now, when he definitely won't get it, because now he's become infamous for that. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that happened in a way, because I don't think it was the intent. I think he was angry, and I don't blame him for being angry. And I, again, support the concept of payback. I think he should have given him a punch in the fucking head with his glove on.
Oh, yeah.
Like one of those. That would have been, he wouldn't have gotten suspended.
Nope.
He would have sent the same message. Mm-hmm. Or tackle the guy down, or throw your gloves off and challenge him.
Yeah.
Like that, stick to the head. Whether it was intentional or not, it was a stick to the head.
Exactly.
So I think the punishment was probably apt, although, again, kind of unfortunate.
To sum it all up is, and this is, I promise this will be the last Leafs thing, although there is a Leafs connection in the next topic I'll bring up, and that is...
Phil Kessel?
Yep. Yep. The last thing I'll say about this Morgan Reilly thing is that, and the previous episode, I said that this Toronto Maple Leafs team, I'll watch the hockey because, being a Toronto fan, cool, being a Toronto kid, and I'll enjoy the hockey, the wins and the losses, whatever, but it's exactly the same as 2018, 2019, and you see how bad the defense really is without Morgan Reilly. Shout out North Van, BC. He's a North Vancouver product. He is. And, when you lose he's a true heart to the team. I know Matthews puts up the goals, and Marner's got heart for being a Markham kid. And Tavares, everyone hyped up that comeback with that pajamas and blanket photo that went around for 3 months when he signed. But Morgan Reilly is a true heart to the team for me.
I don't disagree with that. I think he's certainly the most consistent player on that team.
Yep.
And the only defenseman I would trust.
Yeah, he's literally the only defenseman on that team you trust. Everyone else is kind of iffy or has one strong quality and then sucks with the rest.
Well, they won the first game without him, and they seem to win it pretty handily. So
I will say, I'd argue that St. Louis just didn't play well, and that if you look at, because Bobby McMahon, the storyline of that game is that a Leafs rookie, or at least young kid at least, because he had a couple games played last year. He got a hat trick, but if you look at those goals, that was just poor defense. Mm-hmm. And the first one as well, head down, just sling it towards the net. The Leafs got fortunate that game.
Yep, I don't disagree.
And
they're holding their own tonight. I don't have my phone on me. I don't know what the current score is. But
it was 1-1 last time I checked, but I'm not gonna jinx this. I'm not. You know what? I'm not gonna talk about the game because I don't want to jinx.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Okay, do you want to talk some Phil
Kessel? We got to talk about
Phil
Hot Dog
Thrill?
Boy. Hot Dog Man is in BC. Training stint with the Abbotsford Canucks.
Did you see the video?
I did see some of the training video clips. No, I did not see that.
There's video up now. It was up yesterday of him training with the Sedins in Abbotsford.
Wow.
Look good. I mean, honestly, he looked good. Like, you say what you want to say about it, and then I'll go.
Phil Kessel, at least as a Leaf, he's always been exactly what you expect of a winger. Streak down the wing, put a hard shot towards the net. You hope for either a rebound to the charging player or you're going to score. That's what made him a consistent 30-goal scorer when he was with the Leafs.
Yep.
He never had a true number one center. I'm sorry. Tyler Bozak, good player, but you're not a number one center. Plain and simple. Look at his transition to Pittsburgh now. He's playing third line, the HBK line, Hagelin, Benino, Kessel. Some would argue that in the 2016 Cup final, I believe, that he could have won the Conn Smythe.
Yep.
Because of just how much of it. And that was him as a bottom six player. So he adds scoring depth when he can score. Do we know if he can score at an NHL pace right now? No, because we haven't seen him perform.
34?
Right? Yeah, 34 years old.
It's not that old.
No, he's not. And his strength has always been his speed skating along the wing. And the guy absolutely sucks at conditioning during the season.
See, I hear mixed things about that because as people have been talking about him the last few days, I've heard he was a monster in the gym, like just an absolute.
To prepare for the season, yes. And this is, okay, so for those of you who watch other hockey podcasts, John Michael Lyles was a guest on Spit and Chicklets. And his imitation of Phil Kessel is actually pretty funny. Like a little too exaggerating on that meh kind of sound.
Yeah, yeah.
But he was pretty much saying, like, Phil would always make weight at the season. During at the beginning of the season, preseason, Phil Kessel makes weight. But in the midst of the season, that's where he kind of dies off, and he barely drank any water. He was always just a Gatorade or Powerade guy, specifically Gatorade. He always asked for Gatorade. If it was Powerade, he would never drink it. But it's just a weird dude when it came to fitness in general.
Yeah.
And then always mixed reviews. The review then was, he was always great to start off the season, but during the season, that's when he would get inconsistent with his fitness.
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. Like Rutherford's so interesting because boy, does he go back to the same well over and over and over again. He loves to get players that he's already, signed, and in other cities, which is interesting. What I like about it is as good as the Canucks have been this year, and as good as the scoring has been this year. If you look at the numbers on the second line power play, they suck. Everybody's always shitting on Mikheyev. He's got 0 goals. Why is he on the second power play? He has got 0 goals.
Who else are you going to put there?
Well, you know how many goals Garland's got on the power play? 1.
Yep.
So the problem isn't Mikheyev. I like the concept of having somebody like him on the second power play unit. To me, that's really interesting. The problem is who comes out. Like, he goes in, who comes out? Like, I don't think there's anybody right now, barring injury, and of course Dakota Joshua is injured, so there's a place maybe he could have slotted in. But that's the part I it's like, I could see him adding something, but under the old "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" sort of thought, I don't know. Like, who do you pull out if you put him in?
If the only person I can think of that you pull out is Nils Åman. But the problem here's the thing is Taka created a really good bottom six. I think he developed the best bottom six.
Maybe the best in the league.
Yeah, I was going to say I think he developed the best bottom six forward crop in the league. I've mentioned it before. Love watching Dakota Joshua. We'll get to him into a second. Love watching Teddy Bluger when he's successful. Love watching Pia Suter when he gets on the board and he gets his chances. You just love to see the bottom six win.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. And then we'll move on to Dakota Joshua. Gordie Howe hat-trick against the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yep.
How did that make you feel, Mr. Simkin?
I was laughing. I was reading some interview. You know who the leader is in Gordie Howe hat-tricks?
Who?
Talk it.
Really?
It's something like 16. You know how many Gordie Howe hat-tricks Gordie Howe had? 2. So what is that? I mean, I just thought when I heard that, I laughed. I'm like, why do they even call it the Gordie Howe hat trick then? And then one of his sons made a comment that said, well, if it was a true Gordie Howe hat trick, it would be a goal, an assist, and a cross check to the mouth. He said that would be a real Gordie Howe. Yeah. Apparently had many of those. Joshua's been amazing this year. I mean, he's been a revelation. And the most interesting thing about him, I think, is he didn't start the year that way. No. He started the year rough, and Tocchet was vocal about it and outed him as somebody who was not pulling his weight. And I guess they took him aside and basically said, your career's on the line here. If you want to be an NHL player and stay up here, you got to do A, B, and C. And I'll be damned, he actually did A, B, and C. So he's now, like, as soon as this podcast is over, I'm walking to the arena and I'm going to see the Canucks and Red Wings tonight. I'm a bit freaked out he's not playing. Like, he's become that important where, like, if it had been the first 30 games, I would have been like, whatever. Now I'm like, oh, shit. Who are they going to put in tonight and what's going to happen? And
it's probably going to be Phil DiGiuseppe again, who Tocchet did give him appraisal early in the season. DiGiuseppe actually fought for a starting spot in the first 15 games.
I like him. I mean,
and he's a forecheck player, so he fits the bottom six rotation well. But I think Dakota Joshua was just playing so great that even on the penalty killing unit, when you have a guy who can not just dump and chase, but can dump, forecheck, allow the rest of your killing unit to change, and then come back. Like, that's a huge
And then once
thing.
in a while do something amazing skill-wise where you kind of go, oh, shit, this guy is like that goal he scored in the last game against Chicago was the patience of waiting out the goalie was incredible. And the backhand was incredible. Like,
you didn't expect that.
No, you don't expect that. The only thing I kind of don't like about him is my wife finds him attractive.
That's the only thing.
Yeah, so that kind of bugs me. If I ever meet him at one of these events, I might have a thing or two to say. No, I'm kidding. I'll break your other hand, you motherfucker. You ever touch my wife, I'll break the hand. It'll be interesting tonight to see if there's a noticeable difference in this team without him. And suddenly the Canucks are human. We have two important pieces of this team out. And we've been lucky this year. And suddenly we're not. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, they've shown such resilience in so many other ways this year. It'll be interesting to see if they can show resilience when it comes to, having a few players out. And let's face it, once a playoff starts, somebody's going to get hurt. Yeah. They always do because of the way everybody plays at that point in time. So I'm very interested in the game tonight. A little, I don't know what's the right word, a little nervous about it. I mean, we've not played well against Detroit this year. We just haven't. So I don't know. It'll be interesting.
There was a 4-3 overtime loss to Detroit prior to last episode's recording.
That's the game in which Zadorov got suspended.
Yep.
He's back tonight.
Yes, it was a 3-game suspension, 2. Right? 2? Oh, perfect. He's back tonight.
He's back tonight.
Again, with that Zadorov hit, I'm not going to dwell too much about it. That was just mispositioning, and then you just put your shoulder straight into his head.
Yeah, that was a weird one. Like,
it was a weird approach to it, and I get it. When you're Zadorov, you have to try to get as low as possible, but low for you against DeBrincat is really, really low. So at that point, just don't even go for the check.
Well, it was interesting. Brendan Batchelor, who is the play-by-play guy for the Canucks, and a friend. He's a great dude. He tweeted after that game. He tweeted a tweet that was just the rule about match penalties.
All right, so Zadorov back in the lineup, Dakota Joshua out. We look at the Canucks record since we last recorded. Overtime loss to Detroit, OT win against the Capitals, 4-2 win against the Blackhawks, and then prior to all those games, a few weeks ago now, a 4-0 loss to the Bruins. So
Hold on, so how did it go? So this was the road trip was, what was the game before Boston?
Carolina.
So we win in Carolina, a gritty kind of interesting win. We get our ass kicked in Boston.
Yep.
We lose in overtime to Detroit.
Yes.
Where Zadorov gets the suspension. We win in overtime against Washington.
Yeah.
And we win in regulation against Chicago. It wasn't the prettiest road trip, and it wasn't like I think they played particularly well. But I think that's a good sign. I mean, the fact that this team can come 7 points out of 10 on a road trip where they were kind of mediocre.
It's also a weird road trip in general because you'd think if you're going to do that road trip, you'd knock out the entire, like the traditional, the entire or a portion of the upper Northeast. So you go, if you're going to do Carolina, then you do more of the Metro Division, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Islanders, Rangers, and then go so on and so forth. And if you're doing the Atlantic, then you go, okay, Boston, Tampa, Florida, back home. It was a weird road trip where scheduling is concerned in general.
Yeah.
I think that was brutal just in general, like the travel. And then, you had Super Bowl Sunday that made a 10 a.m. start in Washington, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I think that was just a hard trip in general. Like those can take a hard toll on you.
Yeah, and I know that I did hear that from a few people. Like I heard from a few commentators kind of going like, it was routed in a way that like was really brutal for the Canucks, and you had to fly east, then west, then east, then west again.
Yeah,
like it wasn't optimal. And having 2 games in a row starting at noon or earlier.
The Capitals game was earlier.
Which it's a Super Bowl day, so they needed to specifically schedule it, or knowing full well that
Taylor Swift and the Chiefs were going to take over.
And then nobody was going to give a shit about hockey at a certain point that day. But I don't know. I mean, I felt pretty good about it. And, again, to have a team who's not playing amazing and still coming out with 7 out of 10 points feels pretty good. I mean, I don't know. This team just seems, and here we are, 35 games left or more or less. And they've somehow widened their gap over the second.
Yeah, so during this recording, prior to the results of a Bruins game and prior to the results of a soon-to-be Red Wings and Canucks game, the Canucks have a 4-point lead on the Boston Bruins for first in the league. And as a Canucks fan, after all the years of are we rebuilding, are we not rebuilding? Are we rebuilding, are we not rebuilding? When you're in this position, like just to kind of cap off the podcast here, in this position, you see that you're 4 points ahead of second, you're first in the league. How does it feel this year specifically? Like, does it still feel a little odd to you, or do you still feel like there might be a chance that for some dumb reason that this falls apart and you go to the last wild card spot? Like, how do you feel as a Canucks fan right now?
It's funny because the first, let's say 20, 25 games, I didn't believe it. I really just didn't trust it at all. I was just waiting for the wheels to fall off. I was just waiting for things to go horribly wrong, and it just didn't. And then you get to a certain point where I can't remember. It was a specific game too. It was a specific. I wish I could remember which one, but it was probably sometime in early December, a game here where I kind of went to the game and we beat a team that I don't know. I think I remember that night, like the odds, like the Las Vegas odds were like, we would lose, and we won. And I think I tweeted that night something like, okay, I accept it. We're good. Because up till then, I just didn't trust it at all. Now I do trust it. And I think that the team, I mean, should they be first overall? I don't know. Like, are there better teams? There might be better teams. But is this a good team? Yeah, this is a really good team. And it's all about the supporting cast this year. If you think about it, we have the same stars we've had for 4 years.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed at all. It's Petey, it's Quinn Hughes, it's Miller, it's Besser, it's Demko. It's not like the starring cast has somehow changed. It hasn't. What's changed is the supporting cast.
Yes.
And the supporting, and I guess I didn't really realize, and clearly neither did Jim Benning, how important that really is, not just in the sense of not having players who shouldn't be there, who don't deserve to be there, but in the sense of how it impacts the star players who now don't have to worry about doing everything. They can just worry about doing the things that they're really, really good at. And to me, that's made all the difference in the world. To me this year, it's like if there's an addition that's made the biggest difference, I mean, there's probably two. Actually, that might not be fair. Roenick, I think, is a huge reason for the team's success. in part because he plays so well, but also in part because it enabled Quinn Hughes to play so much better.
You have a guy you can trust on your right side.
because he's not playing with fucking, I don't want to throw people on it, but, like one of these guys they'd call up from junior.
It's not only that, he's not playing with the staller. Quinn Hughes doesn't have to, he plays both sides of the puck really well already, but you just see freedom in his legs. You see freedom in his offensive play. You
Because
see
he doesn't
freedom
have
in
to
his
worry
transition.
that if he goes on a rush,
He has confidence Philip Hronik
that
now.
the guy backing him up
Yeah.
can actually back him up.
Exactly.
And then there's, so I do believe in the team now. I mean, are we going to win a Stanley Cup? I don't know. I would have said absolutely not. The only reason I would hedge my bets a little now is just how adept and strategically smart Rutherford and Alvin have been. The pickups have been really incredible. I mean, even the Lindholm one, I mean, he's yet to really show, I think, everything he is.
Pure consistency.
But then again, it's 6 games in. I mean, maybe tonight's the night when we really see. I'm so excited to see him.
I'm excited to see him in his new lineup. Him, Pettersson, and Höglander, a new Swedish connection. I thought that was a really good lineup in the game, and and this addresses the supporting cast. The point that you just brought up, the versatility in this lineup is crazy now. It's insanely good.
Yeah,
insanely underrated.
And that shows in the way that they win games. I mean, there are games they win from pure skill. The power play connects 75%, and I mean it's just a skill win. But goddamn, they can win these sort of ugly,
Grinded out
scrappy,
games.
like the Carolina game.
Yeah.
Like the Washington game, which were both kind of scrappy and gritty, and they somehow find a way, even in a game like that, to come out on top. That's pretty wild. And I got to say, that's something that is reminiscent a bit of 2010, 2011 team, who had a similar sort of combination of like skill and grit. And so who the hell knows? I mean, they make another move at the deadline. And I mean, and then, like, can you imagine if Phil Kessel comes in and plays an integral role and they either get to the Cup final or win? God damn, like Rutherford's going to look like.
Him and Alvin already do. The pro scouting department flipped when they arrived. Last offseason was key to signing the supporting cast that they have now, which they did. And, knock on wood, I really hope Carson Soucy makes his comeback soon. He's going to fill out this team, and I just want him to be healthy for the playoffs. And that's really it. That's the point of the season to emphasize is the supporting cast around the core that you mentioned is spectacular and better than anyone expected from that season as well. Because we didn't know. Canucks fans were always in the lull of, well, fuck, I guess we'll see if this works this time or if another coach is getting fired. Let's see what happens. And then to the point you mentioned, after the first 20 or so games, that's when you saw, like, wins. And, I'll end on a funny JT Miller note. So know how there's an actor named TJ Miller?
Of course. Silicon Valley.
Yeah. So when JT Miller was first acquired, and I have – the source that told me this, I'm not gonna good friend, he was at that event, or not necessarily event, but gathering, and it was I believe it was at Francesco Aquilini's house.
Oh yeah.
And Francesco Aquilini, he was saying, good to see you guys here. Good to see you here. See you boys here. Except for TJ Miller back there, he was acquired from the Lightning, and he just referred to JT Miller as TJ Miller.
As a joke or on purpose?
He didn't know his name. Dude, he was just referring to him as TJ Miller the entire night.
You know what's weird? They even kind of look similar, those two guys.
If you gave JT Miller
the fro,
and like the wave and flow and
That's
so
funny,
on.
I never really thought about that.
Yeah, so that was it.
JT Miller's Jonathan, I think. Jonathan Tanner?
I think so. I never looked too much into it.
I think
it might be Jonathan Tanner.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, no, that's good shit.
That's good shit.
That's pretty funny, but yeah, I mean, tonight's going to be a gas. It'll be interesting. I'm going to the game with James Younger, one of the guitar players in the band Yukon Blonde. So that should be fun, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully it's a win tonight. And yeah, I don't know. Here we are, sort of into the great unknown at this point with this team, and anything's possible, but I really don't foresee a collapse. I just don't. Like, I think the worst case scenario is maybe we come down to earth a little bit, and because we would pretty much have to lose every game left.
Yeah, you have to lose every game left, which is impossible.
I just don't see it happening. Even
no.
if we played 500 all the way out, we're still in the playoffs.
You're still in the playoffs. You're still in the top 10 in the league. If
Yeah,
you play
so
500 throughout.
I'm feeling pretty good, man. Quietly confident about it all, not overconfident, and it'll be for me tonight. And I'll talk about it on the next podcast. I think my eyes are going to be largely on Lindholm tonight. It's funny. I've seen him play so many times because we play Calgary so many times. Yet I don't know a whole lot about that dude. I know he's a good player. I know he's fucked up the Canucks in the past. Like, he's scored. He's been the reason we've lost to the Flames at times in the past. But I don't feel like I know that player. And I'm really, really tonight, that's going to be, I think, my focus is really keeping my eyes on him, wearing the Alex Edler 23.
Yeah. Never
What's
thought
that
I'd see
about?
that number come about.
What's that about? I thought we might try and get Edler. He's also like Kessel. He's like just a free agent.
Just a free agent who's looking.
I'm
I
surprised
wouldn't
nobody's
bank.
picked him up.
I don't know. Like, look, I think, you know why I don't think people haven't picked him up? Because look at Mark Giordano in Toronto right now. I get it. Giordano's up there. He's 40. But Gio's just pushing and pushing, and it's just, you can tell his legs aren't underneath.
Is he out
him
again,
anymore.
or is he in again?
He's in again, but it's just, when you see him jump up on the rush, you're like, oh boy, I hope he can make it back on the back check, because how much high energy shifts can you really put into a game when you reach 40? That's like
it doesn't
80
say
in
much.
hockey years.
It doesn't say much about the Leafs defense core.
No, it doesn't.
Still, I can barely even name any of them. It's weird.
It's bad. It's bad. The defense is horrible, and people tried to dress it up like, oh, you got Jake McCabe and Simone Benoit, but two big hitter defenders.
They're going to give up the ship for Tanev.
If they do, I'm selling my Leafs gear.
Because apparently Calgary's like, if you don't have a first round to give us, then we're not even going to talk to you.
Calgary is shopping Tanev more because Noah Hannafin hasn't made a decision on whether he wants to stay in Calgary or he doesn't. Like, if you listen to Friedman during the intermission of certain games, when Rogers broadcasts those games, or even Hockey Night in Canada when he does his thoughts, one of them was, Calgary doesn't know what's going on with Noah Hannafin. Is he staying? Is he not staying? Is he staying? Is he not staying? And Noah Hannafin hasn't revealed anything to the press this time.
He's going to have to decide before the trade deadline, or else they're probably just going to move him.
Exactly. And so Hannafin hasn't made a decision. It's Tanev that's being shopped right now. But the thing is, it's weird. Even Craig Conroy's like, we're not calling this a tank. We're not counting us out just yet. Craig Conroy's just making these bold statements.
Right now?
They're out. They've
Are they
been
close?
No, they're not close. Like, I get it, the Western wild card's a little easier, but Calgary, you're not making it, dude. Chill out. But yeah, man.
If I was them, man, I would fucking unload. I'd
Unload?
I'd probably unload. I hate to say it, but I'd probably unload Markstrom too. And
He would be a great player to unload. I get it. He's inconsistent. He only has 2 years left on his contract. I think it's something like $6.5 million.
But that's a negative. I mean,
I don't think 2 years for a $6.5 million goalie who has proven to be good, as long as you give him a decent backup and let him perform in the playoffs, that's completely fine. Like, look at Jonathan Quick and Igor Shesterkin in the Rangers right now.
Yep.
Right?
Agreed.
I think Markstrom, I'm not saying he's going to be Shesterkin quality or he's going to have his quick moments, but I think he's a good starter still. I think if you're the Leafs, don't overpay for Tanev. Go for Markstrom. Let go Samsonov.
That's interesting.
That's my hot take of
That's
this episode, for the Leafs at least. I'm sorry to bring up the Leafs again. But, we'll get you off to that Red Wings game with James Younger.
Yes.
And Yukon Blonde. The guitarist for Yukon Blonde?
Yeah, I think he writes, he sings. So James does a lot of stuff, and great guy, and great producer too. And we work with him a lot, and just one of my favorite human beings. And always look forward to hanging out with somebody with a British accent.
Yeah, I don't know if this is an insult or not, but he said, I have the same mannerisms as Mike Noble from Light Organ Records, Hotel Mira.
You do? Or
yeah,
he does?
that I do.
Oh, I don't know what that means.
I don't know either.
I have no idea what that means.
Don't know
That's
to take it to insult or compliment, but
That's
hey,
a strange thing to say.
very
But
strange.
all right, everybody. So
Yeah.
thank you. We're going to slide out from the. I still can't get the name. It
The
doesn't.
Canuckle Puck Podcast.
I
brought
love
to
the
you by-
name, but I can't quite. It doesn't flow out yet.
It's
I still want to say
syllables at the very Canuckle and then Puck right afterwards. So
the
you
Canuckle Puck Podcast. The Canuckle Puck. It's like a tongue twister. The Canuckle Puck Podcast. The Canuckle Puck Podcast. There. Signing out from the Canuckle Puck Podcast. You got the last word or no?
No, you got it, man. Signing off from the Canuckle Puck.
See, yeah. Now I fucked you up.
Signing off from the Canuckle Puck Podcast.
We'll
or
talk to you
attempting
next
to.
week after there'll be Detroit tonight, Winnipeg on Saturday, which is going to be very interesting.
Monday versus the Wild and Tuesday versus the Avalanche.
Away. 'Cause,
Yes.
Yeah. It's so okay. There'll be lots more to talk about then. Take care, everybody.
Goodbye.